back to the Bible in History. I'm Jeff Johnson. With me, of course, is my mother, Rebecca Johnson. Today we're going to be talking about Europe and the groups that settled there in Europe, and then probably be getting into a little bit of the Americas. So a lot of interesting people groups, but not much written down about them in the early times. We can kind of run right through these. I'm going to begin reading Jeremiah 51, verse 27, which says, "Set ye up a standard in the land, blow the trumpet among the nations, prepare the nations against her, call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Minni, and Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her, cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars."
So it might be a curiosity, why would we pick this verse? But the key word there is Ashkenaz. And if you know anything about the Jewish people, you'll know that there's a large group of Jewish people called the Ashkenazi Jews. And we're going to find out a little bit about that today. Yeah. So let's get into this. So again, to clarify, this is still happening just years, 4 to 5 years max out of the Tower of Babel. And it feels like we've just kind of been frozen in time, but you have to understand this dispersion, 70 family groups, are leaving and settling all at the same time. And that is key. Yep. So let's get into Europe. We've talked about Africa, we've talked about the Middle East, we've talked about Asia. So let's now talk about Europe. Same time frame as the Indus River Valley civilization. Not much has changed here in our time frame, as well as the Minoan culture that we talked about. These are the descendants of Jfest, and they head into Europe to settle. Jfest himself goes on to fame in the settlements. Like many things, we talked about the name in English, James. In Portuguese is Tiago, which has, you wouldn't connect them at all. So you have to remember that. So he's actually credited with things like the name Jupiter in Rome, which of course becomes a god. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see this over and over, where they're going to take the original founder and turn him into a god, which does create a little bit of confusion, because then people are like, oh, well, maybe he wasn't real, but in fact they were very real, just
mythified,
exalted to a position that was not correct.
Yeah, they add a lot of deeds. They kind of add some actions that whoever it is has done that he either didn't do, or are impossible, or maybe that he just brought with him from the Tower of Babel. Different things like that. So and most myths or legends, and I think I've said this before, but most myths or legends do come from some kind of fact. And
exactly. A
lot of these people were actual people. They just got honored way more than they should have, and they got a lot of things attributed to them that they shouldn't have or didn't do, because they were, they started whatever group it was. People admired that, and so they view him as more than he was, and give him a lot more than he should have.
Right. Exactly. And quite frankly, Catholics are still doing that today. Mm-hmm. The whole sainthood. Yep. They're still naming saints today, and it's the same concept. So nothing new under the sun. Nope. So Jfest's line is going to be the one that will predominantly fill up Europe. It's interesting because the Anglo-Saxons and the Danes can trace their king list back to Noah through Jfest. Now it's interesting because Jfest, in their king list line, and we talked about this, so keep it in mind, Sheaf, something like that. Okay, it's Sceaf. But that is Jfest. And remember, you have linguistic changes that happen, and that's going to be expected. So the grandson of Jfest, Ashkenaz, which we just read about in that scripture in Jeremiah, would originally settle in what is modern-day Armenia, but then would also spread, co-founding with Father Gomer, the Germanic tribes. So yes, literally German, but the Germanic tribes kind of covers a bit more than just Germany back in the day.
Yeah, they were pretty big.
And so Gomer, Gomer and Magog would cover more of Germany up in through Russia and what was part of the USSR, which I know kids today don't even know what that is, but the old former Soviet Union, which covered like modern day Georgia, down into the modern day Ukraine, which they're trying to take back.
A lot of the Baltic states there along, I think it's the Baltic Sea there.
Yes.
Just all those tiny little countries that just border the Baltic Sea and Russia up through
right
to the north, Poland, and all of that. So that whole weird region.
Exactly. It is. And most of, a bulk of Japheth's relatives are going to cover that zone. Ashkenaz, Tubal, Meshach, Magog, Gomer, Togmar, Cheras, Dona. There you go. Now I'm going to show you this book. This is After the Flood. I really recommend this by Bill Cooper. This, if you want to know a little bit more in depth about European history in connection to the Bible, this is a fantastic book that'll tell you. After the Flood, Bill Cooper, B.A. and something else. I don't know. He's from England. And it is a really informative book. He's done incredible work tracing the king lines and explaining. So I really recommend that book. It's just really a good insight into what's going on in Europe at the same time as these other civilizations that we think were greater.
Yeah.
It's interesting because Japheth's other grandson, Tarshish, now we've heard that one before too. Think about the story of Jonah. Where did Jonah flee?
He went to Tarshish.
He fled to Tarshish, which is Spain, modern day Spain. And they were great shipbuilders. This is going to be important. Notice we're coming right off the Tower of Babel and we're already building boats.
Yep.
So, and we've talked about the Chinese, that they were great shipbuilders as well. They get this technology from the Ark. It isn't something that they developed as they evolved.
Yeah, no.
They knew this. So, interesting thing, as you study these people, you will discover very quickly that these grandsons, sons and grandsons and great-grandsons, my earpiece is falling out. Let me put that back in. They had interesting things. They're going to go on to the islands of England and Ireland, continuing to settle. They had the knowledge of flight.
Yep.
They had Greek fire, something that people thought was only invented in the Middle Ages at the time of the Crusades, but they had Greek fire before that.
It was very
which I love.
impressive feats
Yes.
and a lot of things, and you got the shipbuilding, and it's, especially when you talk about flight. I mean, that's a very complex bit of work.
Exactly.
So it just
And-
continues to go to prove their intellectual levels.
Yes, they are extremely intelligent. They were not stupid people. They, across Europe, they would worship the moon god Diana, which is Semiramis. Okay, she's just morphed into Diana. And her husband, the sun god, surprise, surprise, Apollo. Apollo would be Nimrod.
Yep.
So we're still having this pagan worship going on throughout. And that's going to continue. Paganism in Europe is going to be huge. Very, very big.
Yep.
For a very long time. Very much into pagan practices, the Druids, the worship of nature, and the worship of the moon and the sun. That's the reason we're going to find a lot of stone rings, stone circles, like Stonehenge in England, which is actually on top of, they've discovered that it's on top of another Stonehenge that's beneath it, buried, just because of time, not because they buried it, but things get buried over time. So this practice coming from the Tower of Babel, they have taken the pagan worship with them into Europe.
Yep.
Okay. So, like I said, you're going to have to research because, like I've said before, these cultures are so complex and they're so huge and there's so much more going on. It would take us forever to get through. So we're not going to, just like with China and Egypt, we're not going to park here forever. We're going to move on because I want to talk about the Americas. Now, up until now, Europe, India, China, the Middle East, Africa, as far as Egypt and Northern Africa, settled within literally years of the Tower of Babel.
Yep.
All at once. Okay. The Americas take just a little bit more time because of distance.
They
but
have,
not.
Yeah, either way you go at it, they do have an ocean to cross. So there's a little bit more work that is needed to get there. But even still, I think it's rather impressive how quickly they get there. And that they knew it was there, I mean.
Yes. So, what have you heard all of your life about how the Americas were settled? What have you heard? Not you, Jeff, because you've heard from me. But what is the most
I know a lot.
What do they hear? That they what? How have you heard that they've gotten across? What have you heard, Jeff?
I'm not sure what you're exactly going for, but what I've heard
because I taught you so well.
Yeah.
They've walked across a land bridge in Russia, from
Yeah.
Russia to the United States across a land bridge. In other words, it took thousands of years because they were walking and they were cavemen kind of, and it was an accident and they were chasing the dinosaurs or something.
Yeah, I think
Anyway.
The story goes they were chasing the mammoths across Russia, up across a land bridge into Alaska, and then down through Canada, and into
the
America.
Well, while I will not deny that probably one or two people accidentally did this, because even today in North Russia there are still people who follow the herds. It is a dying lifestyle, but it's still a lifestyle in Northern Russia where people live in tents and follow the reindeer herds as a livelihood. But the bulk of the people who landed in the Americas did not come that way. They came by ship.
Yep.
And they came from every direction. The Americas has always been a melting pot. Always. And we're going to see as we study this, people were coming from the direction of Africa. Mm-hmm. They were coming from Europe. They were coming from China. So they're coming from all directions around and hitting the Americas from both sides.
Yeah.
Not just one side. They didn't just wander down that bridge.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because if you look at the globe, the Americas are on the opposite side of the world from where the ark was. So if everybody's kind of leaving the ark in kind of a circular formation, kind of all the different things, you come around and you wrap around to the Americas from all different angles. Whereas, India, you just kind of hop over real quick, or China or Europe. The Americas is on the other side, so you're wrapping around all different people. You go to an end, you reach an ocean, and then you get on a boat and follow it around, and you're gonna hit the Americas. You'll hit it in the Californias. You can hit it in the colonies,
exactly.
The 13 originating colonies. You can hit it in Brazil. You can hit it in Argentina. There's a lot of different angles you can hit it from because it's on the opposite side. You just wrap around.
Exactly. And that is what happened.
Yep.
It's interesting. The city of Caral, Caral, in modern, it's in the north of modern day Peru. Okay. And it's interesting because archaeology is, in more recent years, focused in on the Americas. Whereas in the past, in the 1920s and 30s, everything was the Middle East.
Yep.
As the Middle East has become so incredibly unstable under Muslim rule, archaeological digs become more and more difficult. Where in the 1920s and 30s, it was very open for archaeological digging. It is now very dangerous to dig in the Middle East, and in some places forbidden. And of course, then we have the Muslims blowing up everything. Thank you very much, of history, because, I don't know, something about the religious sect saying that it has to be done. So they're destroying history. And so it has given the Americas an opportunity that it didn't have before, for archaeologists to shift their focus and start looking here in the Americas, which is fantastic because it's giving us an insight into something, and this city is one of them. As they've excavated it, they've discovered that that city in northern Peru, Caral, Caral, I'm probably saying that with more of a Portuguese accent than a Spanish, sorry about that, was founded about the exact same time that Egypt was founded. 2220 BC, more or less. So we're talking maybe a year or two later, and the only reason is they had to get on a boat and travel. And we know from other sources that you can travel from the Middle East to the Americas, maybe around the Cape of Good Hope, or, you know, in a more roundabout way to get where you need to go. But it doesn't take 10 years
Doesn't take very long
to
at
sail
all.
the earth. You can do it in a year and a half, even in a sailboat. So, come on, guys. This people group in this city, a lot of interesting things about it. And this is going to come up again and again. We saw this in Egypt. We see this in China. We're going to see this in North America. We're seeing it here in South America. They were building using pi 3.14 to factor the needs for the buildings. They also proved that they had a very high level of learning. And this is interesting. Explain this. The city was perfectly acoustic. In other words, you could be at one end of the city and speak, and it would echo back at you perfectly from anywhere in the city. Now, I'm not sure what the need for acoustic perfection was in the city.
It's an impressive feat, if a little bit confusing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
regardless, the fact that they were able to do that, it's not something that happens on accident. It's something you do on purpose. For whatever reason, you do that on purpose. What that reason is has been lost to time.
Yes.
It is there.
It's interesting as well, throughout Peru in particular, which was very highly advanced society, this is pre anything that the Spanish would find. Okay, these are the founders before you hit the Aztecs in the north and the Mayans in the south. So pre this, and even pre-Olmec, which we'll talk about next time, places are built in such a way. We have a personal missionary friend who is from Peru, grew up there, and he remembers earthquakes where he had to run outside and buildings are falling down, and yet everything built by the pre-Olmec, the very early first settlers, didn't move. Huge, massive megalith structures, and they didn't move when everything else was falling down. In the Americas, immense, incredible buildings going on, very similar to Egypt in awe, in how on earth did they do this? How did they get something that big upright? How did they move these rocks? We don't know. And so they were very advanced, and they were building very, very advanced societies. So, not too many years, I mean, I'm going to give it 5 max off the Tower of Babel split. We already have people in the Americas. That's how fast this happens. So it's a super exciting spread of time. It's really
very
amazing.
quick. It's a very exciting time, a very busy time for everyone. Of course, they're going out building their cities and setting everything up. So it's a very busy time of history, very interesting time as we watch everybody move around and set up shop, as it were.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, our time is up and we've barely touched the surface. We'll talk a little bit more about North America next time because we haven't even gotten there. We only hit Peru, for heaven's sake. We haven't hit Brazil or anything. And they are coming from all sides. So we'll talk more about the Americas next time because it's a great and exciting thing going on. And the fact that it happened at the same time as Egypt, as the Indus River Valley, as China, as Europe, it's all going on at the exact same time. And that is what's fascinating to me.
Yep.
So
we hope you enjoyed this week. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, of course, you can comment in the YouTube section or you can email us at thebibleandhistory@gmail.com. We'd love to try to answer those questions for you. And we hope you'll join us next week as we talk about the Americas. We'll see you then.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to our channel.
You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and Google Podcasts.